evening, guys. Welcome to the exjw Book Club. In this video, I'm going to give a quick introduction to Micah Allen Losh's book entitled Despicable. This is the third installment in his Apostate Trilogy. What is the Antichrist to a hateful God? Are Elohim seekers the true religion? Would you choose your own child over God? When Malcolm is confronted with the truth about his God and Elohim seekers, he will discover who he truly is. Despicable is a dystopian allegory for the decision to leave a high control group. Micah Allen Losh was a Jehovah's Witness for 37 years. He is shunned by his mother and his friends because he is believed to be an agent of Satan. About the author. Micah Allen Losh was a Jehovah's Witness for 37 years. As a child, he was repeatedly told he was a good-for-nothing slave because he was born into the true religion and strived to be spiritual. He stagnated for decades. He had 30 different jobs before he was 30 and attended college 3 separate times, but always quit because he felt guilt for not prioritizing Jehovah. Losh has been writing since he was 18. He is also an artist. While being disfellowshipped and shunned by Jehovah's Witnesses in his 20s, he performed stand-up comedy. Losh believes art is healing and believes that empathy only takes people so far. If you haven't experienced certain things, he believes sympathy is as far as you can go. Losh was left to die in the streets in November of 2020. And he published his first book, Mentally Diseased, in December of 2022. Mentally Diseased is the first book in the Apostate Trilogy, each published 6 months apart. We are going to start off our book club with Micah's book, Despicable, and I'm sure we're going to include his other books, and he's also coming out with a children's book in the near future. If it wasn't for this guy DMing me, I don't think that this book club would have manifested. I am so glad that he reached out to me and that Sergio has agreed to co-host with me, and I am hoping that all of you guys will join us as well. Thank you so much for joining me in discussing your book. I'm so sorry Sergio couldn't come, but get his thoughts another time. I mean, I know he's gonna want to, yeah, enter the chat or something at some point. Yeah. Maybe we can start with that. What made you want to start the trilogy?
Okay, so well, thanks for having me, by the way. But I had always written since I was about 18, and I got on a website. I think it's closed down, but it was called DeviantArt, and it was there because I would write very dark things. My thinking was very dark after my father died, and if I would try and show witnesses, they either would change the subject quickly, or some did compliment me, but nobody really would talk about it. And I would try and show my mother, and she would look at it, and I remember she told me she wasn't as smart as me. And it was a really weird form of rejection, because it was like, well, I'm not trying to signify that I'm intelligent. I'm just writing down thoughts that I have that I think are interesting. And but yeah, I was really trying to connect with her, but it just wasn't a thing. So in my memoir, there's a poem I wrote before each chapter, because I thought, well, I've had some of these for years, I should include them. And then I had hoped to feel closure when I published my memoir, but the day I published Mentally Diseased, I felt very empowered, but I didn't feel closure. And I still had 20 years worth of poetry and song. It's mostly songs, but I can't sing, but I always wanted to have a band. So I compiled them, but I also had kind of some short stories or vignettes, and I didn't feel like those fit. So I decided, because another XJW, Stuart Fletcher, who is an artist, he had told me to keep writing. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to publish the rest of this stuff. And then I had, what was left over. And I growing up, I always loved heavy metal, scary movies, but of course, I couldn't watch. They could only be PG-13 scary or
Mm-hmm.
TV edits,
Mm-hmm.
and but a lot of people treated me like a piece of garbage because I liked horror movies, or because I would see R movies sometimes, or like because I listened to Black Sabbath, and I thought, you know what? It really pisses me off that not only do they shun me and call me all these terms that are absurd, and they're doing it to millions of people. They're coming out so broken. Some of them kill themselves. They're destroying families. They're harming children and not protecting them. So I just felt this immense rage, and I was like, you know what? They want to say I serve Satan, especially since I've spoken out and published a memoir. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
gonna write a version about the Antichrist, and I'm going to pack as much sacrilegious things in it as I can. Because if you say I serve Satan and you've turned my mother against me, one book wasn't enough. I'm gonna publish 3 in a year, 6 months apart for satanic imagery. And that was also why I named each book after a shaming term, because as we've seen recently, Watchtower is changing their history in front of us. Who knows? Give it 50 years, they may have erased. Like, you can't erase that you called us mentally diseased because my dumbass wrote a book and put it on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was just really pissed off, and I it's idiotic. You see these meetings where they're like, I think there was one, they said apostates have weaponized themselves against God or are skilled at fight. It's just it's infuriating, and so, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I'm just gonna write a really brutal, evil, nasty story, and I wanted it to serve as a commentary on religion, but I also wanted it to work as just a story.
Right. Yeah, that was really surprising for me that it was really demonic. Like I was not expecting that at all. And and that's what Sergio was talking about because he warned me. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's a really good book, but I mean like it's really heavy and it goes really deep into things like I don't even understand it yet." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I think my mind can really travel that far or imagine something. Let me see what Micah has to say in this book." And when I started reading, I was like, what is this guy talking about? Why is there so many demonic stuff going on here? And it just gets worse too because so many bad things are happening. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What is going on here? Did you like make this story basically copying the JW structure? Because for me, I felt like a lot of these were parallel to JW positions. Like, for example, the presiding council. To me, that felt like the governing body. Ecclesiastics felt like elders to me. So I don't know. Am I correct in my assumptions?
Well, since this is published as a work of fiction, I can't
Mm-hmm.
really comment, but I did receive inspiration for the religion, from many different sources.
Okay.
So I worked very hard to implement toxicity, but different things. But there's definitely a commentary on purity culture, and one of the things, the book is violent. There's a lot of violence in it, but
Mm-hmm.
I try not to really relish the violence, and I try to explain it matter of factly, because the way we grew up, we were always hearing about sexual things or violent things, with parents and other adults. So we had no boundaries, and I feel like that really adds to the culture where you have adults abusing children, because you've talked about all these. I remember my mother's friends, once I was like 15 or 16, and
Mm-hmm.
it was at a party, and she said something about like, why do men masturbate, are you that attracted to your hand, and like it was all adults and me, and just very creepy, inappropriate
Mm-hmm.
things. And also, when I was a child, I remember the Revelation book came out when I was 7, I believe, And my
Mm-hmm.
mom was we were talking about the Holocaust and learning about these horrific things, and my mom told me, "Yeah, during Armageddon, we'll be tortured worse than anyone else ever has been." So I'm thinking about, like being Christians being thrown to lions or tortures and just horrific acts in the Holocaust. And I'm imagining worse things than that when I'm 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really important to me to include violence, to reflect that culture, but not to celebrate it so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, yes. So I wanted to just let everybody know that there are going to be some spoilers to the story because some of my questions really pertain to the characters. So I'm going to start getting into the main characters, Malcolm and Margot. Is that how you pronounce her name?
Margot, yeah.
Margot. Okay. So now you kind of helped me when we were chatting on Facebook to realize that they got renounced, which I believe is disfellowshipping, for getting pregnant out of wedlock. But they canceled their wedding, and I'm kind of upset. Why did they not get married?
Well, because the ecclesiastics had deemed them unworthy of marriage since she had conceived of a child out of wedlock. I don't explicitly say that, but
Yeah.
the horror movies that I like are usually the brutal, devastating kind where
Mm-hmm.
it ends and then you need to go and watch Care Bears for a while. So I wanted to also, have, escalation and build dread. And, there are so many people that are, expelled and they're just cut off and they're robbed of friendships, uh, or even relationships with their children. That's a very real thing. So that is one thing. There's despite this, not the supernatural stuff, but the control and the abuse. I didn't write about anything that isn't happening all over the world in many different organizations.
That kind of got me a little messed up because I felt like they should have got married. They deserved each other. They deserved each other. They were gonna have this baby, and now she has to raise this baby as a single mom. And I was just confused that Malcolm just left, just abandoned the family, just wasn't there for his son or anything. Just well, like you said, he felt like he should have just been raised by the ecclesiastics or as a follower of Elohim. And that's how I felt with the JWs too. Like, oh, they think you're going to be better off just raised by the Jehovah's Witnesses, just whatever.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. So, spoiler alert, their son did not have a happy childhood. That got me upset too. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got really upset with the storyline and the characters because she didn't protect her son. And
No.
he had a really bad childhood. What happened there? Why did you give Christopher a bad childhood?
Because I had a bad childhood. We were child slaves, cleaning kingdom halls in dress clothes. And then when I was 12, my father was diagnosed with cancer. And I prayed so hard. I mean, I really, really tried to be a good JW.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had heard instances at the Kingdom Hall wherever people said, like, oh, my husband was sick and Jehovah healed him. And so I believed it was very real. And even though I saw my father withering, I went with him to get chemo. He died. And yeah, it was weird. It was like every day, what do they say? Every day paradise was closer. But that was such a horrible thing. And then I remember being shamed for it. I remember being told I was juvenile by friends because I was sad, and which was absurd to me. Like I carried a box with my dead father and helped put it in the ground, and I'm a child, but it was at that point that the congregation really began turning against me because I wasn't happy or jovial. I was dealing with something that was very painful, but also my mother came from a very broken childhood. She had two siblings died before she was 10. Her twin brother died in their 30s. Her mother died when she was 5. And my mother has no coping mechanisms. It is just blind obedience to Watchtower. And I know it's because all of those dead people are dangled in front of her like a carrot. And also, what I wanted to reflect in this is there are a lot of people that, just suffered immeasurably as Jehovah's Witnesses, and then they get thrown out into this world and maybe through really terrible circumstances, which I've experienced that as well. But yeah, I mean, I think those are always, the people kind of you root for, the underdog. So there is a lot of this that's reflected, but also I also wanted to create, people that were so evil when I did have evil things happening to them, you didn't really care. Because
Yeah.
it,
Go
I
ahead.
like writing. I try and write complex characters that are compelling and make people feel conflicted emotions. Because
Mm-hmm.
no one is 100% evil.
Mm-hmm.
People are, there are gray areas, and even if you're the worst person ever, you still had people you loved. So yeah, I wanted to kind of go into the gray and not deal with absolute good or bad.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess that moves us into now, after this whole breakup and everything, somebody gets possessed. And that's the scary part because the possession really brought out that like the first introduction to the whole violence in the book was kind of crazy with that possession. And I mean, I still don't really understand it, but I'm glad you're here so I could just ask you, right now. Why did you use the demon to kind of, I felt like the demon got revenge on for the person kind of. So even though the person was there, he had control over the body. And then the demon was doing a lot of bad things to these people who actually did bad things to that person. So what happened there and why did you use that demon to do that?
So that was kind of a short story I had written a long time ago, because all of my writing that I did, for 20 years, bits of it are in all three of those books. So it was kind of built off of that, and also I wanted it to be jarring.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to kind of hint at things and then kind of reel it back a little, pardon me, and flesh out the story some. But then I really wanted to hit you over the head with, this is what you're in for. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's a very grotesque, horrifying thing. But yeah, I just, like I said, I set out to write a book that I wanted. I'm like, well, if I'm just gonna think of mean things and try and
Mm-hmm.
turn them into something positive, a scary story that you can read and discuss. But it's not like, I'm certainly not advocating for that. But yeah, I just thought it was very frightening
Mm-hmm.
about a being control or talking and just not even really addressing the terrible things they're doing to you. And possession, just because I used to be terrified of demons, and I don't believe in any of that, and I think it's superstition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it sucks to be afraid of those things. So it's kind of, I'm going to immerse you in all of these taboo things, and at the end, it's just a
Mm-hmm.
story that I wrote. It's just a book.
Man, and that's what I told you like even before. Like I kind of do still believe in those things. So that's why when I read it, it kind of hit me harder than I thought it would because like every time I kept, flipping through the pages, I'm like, oh my God, what's gonna happen now? Like you've certainly accomplished what you set out to do because I was getting hit with each page and it was like more things like I was like, when is there gonna be like the happy ending? And it took a long time for me. Because next comes a very dark chapter when Malcolm decides to end his life. but he doesn't die. Really, he doesn't die because apparently he goes into this place where he has a conversation with the darkness. And that's where I said, okay, I think this is Satan. And so they kind of make a deal. He kind of makes a deal with the devil. Now, can you
Yeah.
kind of explain that for me? Like, why, what, like the afterlife, like you were saying? So his physical body is dead, but now he's making a deal with the devil and he comes back, which is crazy. But go ahead, explain what happens with the darkness.
So essentially, um, the darkness is one of my favorite parts of this story because, I mean, really, it's open to interpretation. You could take it either way, that they're good or bad. But also, I wanted to write a version of Satan where they were sympathetic, where when you
Mm-hmm.
heard about them, you empathized with them and you wanted to side with them. Because this book is all about essentially, like, I don't hate Christians. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're misled, and I think religion does terrible things. But this book is a giant fu to religion, and the reason he
Mm-hmm.
died is so he can be resurrected because he is the Antichrist. Um, but I did kind of yeah, essentially he's dead and he's traveling, and he is brought to this place where um, something is presented to him, but yeah, I just wanna I remember so many movies we'd be watching and, somebody would get possessed, turn it off. If there was a demon, turn it off. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody died
Mm-hmm.
and then there was a ghost or they spoke from the afterlife, turn it off. So it was just like, no, forget all that. I'm gonna tell a story with all these aspects, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that conversation really got me because now it's like the darkness is waking him up to everything that he grew up and thought was a lie. And
Mhm.
then the creator of the whole religion is there too. So you kind of included her in that conversation with Malcolm and the darkness. And I thought that was crazy. So now Malcolm, even though he's dead, it's like now he's waking up to everything. And I felt like that was crazy because it's like he can't even do anything about it because he's already dead. That's why I was so upset when you killed him in the story or when he killed himself. I mean, whatever you want to call it. But I was so upset that he died because I'm like, he could have really done what he should have done, in the afterlife. He should have done it when he was alive. But now he gets resurrected in somebody else's body.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. So what happened?
Well, so basically, I don't think when you come out of a group, a high control group or a cult, it is essentially a death. If it's all you've ever known, because you had to be all these things and have these certain viewpoints. So as you shed that,
Mm-hmm.
really you're just so it does represent a death, and it is a massive thing and a rebirth. And well, and yet again, he does possess another human.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they swap places. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's possession. It's dealing with a taboo, but it does represent him because if you don't know something, you don't know it. You're not guilty
Mm-hmm.
of not knowing, of being ignorant. But once you know, and once if you have a child that you have indoctrinated or taken into the back of the kingdom hall and beaten, um once you have an obligation to to
Mm-hmm.
protect them, and so it kind of represents that. And also, my son, he likes scary movies. He
Mm-hmm.
likes to watch them with me. He says he doesn't get scared. I think he does, but I also wanted to write a scary story. I forgot to mention this for my little boy. There isn't at the beginning. It says for the boy who loved monsters, which does represent a children's book I'm working on. The title for that, but it
Mm-hmm.
is also. I mean, I wouldn't let him read this story now, but like one day he can be like, "Yeah, my dad wrote a scary book," and like, hopefully that's something. It'll be a good memory and something we can bond over.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me see here because I have a whole page of notes from your book because
Okay.
that's how moved I was. I was like, I need to write this down because it was a lot of information. Because after he makes the deal with the darkness and he comes back, he's on the mission to right all of those wrongs, to find
Yeah,
out everything
right,
that happened to his own son.
right into it.
Yeah, and that's where we start this whole revenge to everybody. He takes the whole thing down, and I think that is like the hero part. But he's doing it in somebody else's body. I think it's his son's. Is it? Is it his
Yeah.
son's body?
So yeah, his son, his name is Christopher. So yeah,
Okay, so through Christopher, now he's taking down the whole entire cult, and then it gets really, really gruesome. It gets really gruesome.
yeah.
So if you guys need to really read this book, whoever's watching or in the comments, read this book because it gets. I kind of felt kind of happy though. I kind of felt happy that he was getting revenge on everybody. I kind of felt like that's what we want to happen in real life. But
Well,
go ahead.
yeah, and I was gonna say, like, it's cool to hear that because that's the point. Like, he's not really he's doing bad things out of anger, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the worst people are being eliminated, even though it's being done in a horrific way, and it feels good, right? But when you're a Jehovah's Witness,
Mm-hmm.
oh, why are you watching an R movie? Are you a lover of violence? They act like you're
Mm-hmm.
so evil. So I wanted to generate confliction, but also, yeah, it's not like, yeah, let's, yeah, I mean, so that's cool to hear because that was kind of my hope and intention.
Oh yeah, because once you started getting into, because you do insert some elements of CSA issues in the book,
Hmm.
and then there was a discovery and a rescue of children from the fictional cult, and that's what Malcolm is doing. As soon as I read that chapter when it's describing all of that, like my heart dropped because I was like, imagine something like that happening. It kind of reminded me like of the movie that came out recently, like The Sound of Freedom, where they were rescuing children and they were they were on a mission to rescue children. So once he rescues these children, that's when everything changes. And then this is towards the end of the book, the last few chapters, where he turns everything against the presiding council and takes them down one by one through torture. That was crazy. The whole torturing scenes where I didn't even want to read it. I kind of just skimmed through it because I was just picturing it in my head and I was like, I can't believe this guy is saying this. How is he writing this? Like explicit details of how he tortured every single one of them because he didn't just kill them. He tortures them. He
Yeah.
tortures like every member.
Well, I, it's funny because I remember reading my book of Bible stories, right? I have a picture of me as a baby screaming next to it. Like one time somebody shared it in a group and I said, "Hey, that's me," and somebody called me a liar. And I was like, "No, I'm a meme now." But there's a I
Oh my god, I'm sorry.
no, you're good. I forget who it is, but in that book, there's some guy like sleeping in a tent, and a woman has a stake and a big
Mhm.
mallet, and I remember as a little boy just looking at that and thinking, I wonder how many times she had to hit it to get it through his head, and just it was all of these very casual, very messed up, I mean, the Bible, like what
Mhm.
is it, David? They or they like brought the foreskins of like 70 Canaanites or something insane. I mean, there are all these insane,
Mhm.
brutal stories. So I just wanted to tell, but like, I really don't think anything in Despicable is worse
Mhm.
than anything in the Bible. I mean, the
Really?
Bible's full. I mean, the Bible is pro-slavery. The Bible is misogynistic. In my story, the women are liberated. Um,
Mhm.
I tried to write feminist characters with the darkness and even the church founder Reina Mira Castra. I mean, I mean, yes, there's brutal stuff, but y-
Mhm.
I mean, there's all kinds of brutal things. Maybe not explained so elaborately, but that's what it. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned that because as soon as he turns the tables around and he makes this announcement for all of the women to, like you said, be literally liberated and then to take that revenge and anger out at all of the males. So is it a gender war going on? So what happened there?
Well, I think it's that's a commentary on the patriarchy, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a lot of female XJWs speaking, and I think that's
Mm-hmm.
problematic. I had
Mm-hmm.
some financial setbacks, but I do have the sign for my podcast I want to launch, and I will eventually. But I really want to speak to women because I don't know if you're familiar with Natalie GR. She made a comic
Yeah.
book called Cult Girls, and she sent me a
Yeah.
copy back when I was writing. And when I was reading it, it talked about how she felt inferior seeing brothers run mics. Now, I hated running mics. I just despised it. It was awful. And then to
Mm-hmm.
think, oh wow, like a girl was envious or felt inferior, I was thinking about myself, and that really expanded my worldview. And it was like, wow, to think that like how many countless little girls or women I made feel inferior just by doing something I didn't even want to do. And I think, women are far more oppressed than the men. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was just kind of a commentary on that. Like, you know what? I'm gonna make. I mean, not everyone who is male in it is evil. I mean, the Antichrist. I mean, I guess you can make the argument he is, but it's just, yeah. I just wanted to tell a story of destruction, and I mean, not everything had intention. Some of it was just like, let's write a messed up story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because as soon as the women were like kind of empowered to direct all that energy towards the men that they kind of had like something against or whatever, they no longer had to follow the rules and everything.
Yeah,
I felt like that was that kind of an element. You gave power to the women in that whole organization, the whole fictional organization. And then that's how I kind of did the same thing like in real life. Now we are able to speak. Now that we're out,
yeah.
now we're able to speak and do things and say things. But then you kind of added that violence to them. And I was kind of like, whoa. So now the women were taking it out on the presiding council and, saving the children. And then they kind of had this whole war going on. And that's what makes your photo shoot, it makes sense now because you're in the middle, right, in the chair, and all of these women are around you and they're all bloodied up, and that should have been my sign that this book was going to be wild. Because
Yeah.
now it makes sense that all of these women literally did the torturing, the oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting a
Oh,
phone
you're
call right
right.
now, but yeah, like you really gave the power to the women, and that was kind of wild because the women take down everything, right?
Mhm.
Like they
Yeah,
dismantle everything and burn it to
yeah,
the ground, basically.
yeah. And well, and of course, the ecclesiastics represent. That's kind of the threshold in the church leadership where they're all aware that children are being harmed. So that's where the level of guilt is. So everybody from there on up must be exterminated. Um, and yeah, you don't off. I mean, some of the best movies have, um, I think, Silence of the Lambs. Jodie Foster, and that is amazing. In Alien, Sigourney Weaver, and she's a really strong character. But both of them are. Even what is it in Terminator? Sarah Connor. They're women who are like, oh wow, this is something insane coming at me, and I'm going to handle it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to lean into it. And so it was also kind of a thing where I thought, like, I never intentionally set out to be, but I bet I was misogynistic a lot. And so I was like, I'm going to write a story in some small way, like make amends, but like celebrate women. And I wanted to create characters, female characters that were unique and would resonate with you. And then the men, most of them are just disgusting, so that was pretty easy to write. But, it was just like I wanted it to be kind of a role reversal.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. I was reading that and I was like, wow, the power that they had, and they were unleashed. You know what I mean? They were
Yeah.
unleashed finally to finally do, do what they had to do. And they did it. But then you have this conversation with, is it Elohim himself? Is that supposed to be like Jehovah when they start talking?
Uh, oh, the Almighty at the end of the,
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, yeah, that's
Okay.
God. Yeah. It
Okay.
w-
Yeah. Okay, let me see here. I'm just reading really quickly what I wrote.
you're right.
Because then Christopher confronts his father, and then I remember discussing this with you, that he has this whole incident in the sanctuary, which is like a kingdom hall, and then he confronts his father, but then he kills himself. So what happened? What happened there?
So the reason I included suicide is I actually the drawing I have there in a summer the Kingdom Hall we went to, there were, it was shared, the two halls. But two guys that I grew up with and had known for years killed themselves. One of them just went to lunch and he shot himself in his truck, and nobody cared, right? And I was pretty close to a breaking point at that point, and I've tried to kill myself a lot. I'm not good at it, but it hasn't been like passive attempts. And for some reason, I mean, I did die when I was 21. I remember the paramedics, I was on the gurney and I passed out or whatever, I died. And then 37 later or hours later, I woke up and I was tied to the bed. And doctors told me like, "Oh, well, God saved you. You're here for a reason, whatever, all this." But and I'm not saying I believe any of that, because I have no evidence of that. But I probably shouldn't be alive. I have had a lot of severe experiences, and for the most part, I've come out unscathed. And I know a lot of people that leave, do end up doing that, and it's horrible. It's awful to be in a kingdom hall when everybody knows you're not doing okay and no one acknowledges you. There were times when I questioned my own existence. One time, I felt like the elders were full of shit because they kept telling me I needed to like reach out, right? And so I thought I'm just going to see how long I can go without receiving a phone call or a text or an invitation. And after a year, I waited a whole year and nothing. Then I ended up like reaching out to somebody, but I just grew up non-entity, and I thought that treatment and my depression and all of that was because I wasn't worthy of Jehovah. And just how dare they keep doing that to people, you know? And so that's why I wanted to, um, I mean, that's why suicide features in a lot of my writing because it's just part of my story. Um, your experience is going to influence your worldview somewhat, and um, there are people who have come out of these groups and reconciliation is impossible. Their parent has just not been a parent for them or has let them down, or when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you think you can always fix it, right? But things can't always be fixed. And you can break people, you can ruin a relationship. And so it's a commentary on that. And also, there is violence going on in churches. People have been killed, there have been explosions. You know, it, it it just felt like the natural way to conclude that story, honestly.
Wow, yeah, that's really heavy. Because I know we spoke about this privately, but I kind of also have a little bit of experience with that. So I kind of know I kind of understand. You know what I mean? Like I've never
Mhm.
actually like physically done anything, but the thoughts are there. And I do have like I totally agree with you about the whole not everything can be fixed and the whole like your parents sometimes are just not there for you. They're not
Yeah.
your parent. I literally went through that recently with my own mom. And that kind of messes with you so much. And sometimes we're just like so alone or just always alone that's why I always say it like I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. So you know what I mean? It's like you're always trying to prove to yourself that you can do it, you can do everything on your own, but you can't. Sometimes we need each other. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what this is. Community is us continuing to talk to one another, books like this to talk to each other about, to share with each other. And I like I told you in our chats on Facebook, I kind of see you now, if that makes sense. Like I see you through this book, through the characters, like
Yeah.
a little bit of you in each character, you know, like not just
Yeah.
one character, but it's like I can see you now so much more because I read your first book and I kind of felt like, oh my God, like this guy cannot hit anywhere else. You were at the bottom, rock bottom, and we all kind of felt like that at one time in our life or another, right? Where you can't go
Yeah.
down anymore. There, we could only go up from here, literally, because that's how down we all
Yeah.
were. But you said your story in a way that somebody like me, we would never know what happened to a guy like you. You know what I mean? Somebody who just left or faded or just got DF and they don't tell us what happened to you. There's no recovery story like, hey, brother so and so is back and yada. No,
Yeah.
there isn't none of that happening. So this is the only way you can get your story out or explain it to us. And I'm like, thank God this guy wrote the book because it's almost like proof. This is proof that somebody like you went through it, survived it, and then created this whole piece of art and just created this whole world in your head, in your mind. And then you got to share it with us, you know? So I want to thank you
Yeah.
for
You're
saving your
welcome.
work, for writing and continuing to write, to actually doing it, producing it, becoming this and making this reality for us. Because this is exactly why these conversations are important because you went through something so horrible like that, but you're still here. I'm still here.
Yeah.
We're all still here despite everything. So
Yeah.
I really want to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, and yeah, I think that's important because, it's not, Watchtower doesn't get to determine what happens to us. They can throw us out and we can lose, but for me, quite often, the only comfort I really found was in media, whether it be music, movies, or books. Like there's a quote from Fight Club. It's only when we've lost everything that we can do anything. And there was a moment when before I started writing, I thought of that. And, it's like, it probably sounds stupid, but the only thing that really helps me deal with the fact that because my mother and I is she's done too many things and estranged me from my son. It's unforgivable. But I feel bad that she's in a cult. And the only thing that makes me feel better, which I do love Batman and Joker, but I think of in Christopher Nolan's first movie, Batman tells a guy on a train, he says, "I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you." And that just I can't have phrased it any better. And that's just why I love art because, there hopefully I'm not seeing in the violence in Despicable, but there are parts of me and thoughts that I did put in many of the characters, and maybe somewhere down the line somebody will read that and it will connect with them because my memoir is my exit story. Mentally Diseased is Gangrenous Speeches is my past, but Despicable is like it's still dealing with the religious trauma, but it's saying I'm going to turn it into something new. And now I've gone beyond that, and I'm working on two books at the moment, but they're both fiction and they're just pure creativity. And I find joy in that. It's what I love to do more than anything almost. And yeah, I just that's why I wanted to just share my story, because I don't think I'm an inspiration, but I do think, people can look at it and be like, you can lose everything. They can take everything from you, and it's up to you.
Right. Yes. And I do believe you are, and your story is an inspiration because there's so many people who don't, like you said, they don't survive that. And
Yeah.
there is no proof because they don't, they're not going to write about it. They're not going to talk about it. So I'm like, your story is important. Your books are important and is appreciated, especially in this community, because I'm always looking for stuff like it, our background connects.
Mhm.
But then you moved on. You did something with your life. Like you created something, and you were not stuck in that way. Like you got to actually produce something. And that's
Yeah.
where I'm like shocked, because I'm like, look at this guy. He was an ex-witness just like me. Or he's talented just like this person, and he actually did something with it. Because like you said before, they suck that passion out of you, and then everything that you like to do, you can't do it. You
Yeah.
can't watch the movies you want to watch, or read the books you want to watch, or listen to the kind of music that you want to listen to. All of that, you don't have that identity anymore. But you kind of did it. You've kept it, and then you've done something with it. And whatever comes on, whatever you do in the future, I'm like, oh yes, I love this guy. What is he gonna come up with next? Like this is gonna be crazy. But that's why I'm happy you mentioned that you was making a children's book. So what's that project? If you want to talk
Oh,
about it.
yeah, no, definitely I can. So, like I said, there were different aspects to my first three books, but with each one, I wanted to challenge myself in a different way. And the second one was mostly just, I didn't change stuff too much. I may have improved some of the verbiage, but I thought, well, I wrote a really brutal, mean story. What's the opposite of that? Seems like a children's book, right? And all
Yeah.
so I've spoke with an artist. I've still, checking, we're still working on stuff. But traditionally, a children's book is 32 pages. So I just kind of wrote this poem because my son always loves to talk to me about monsters, and my favorite book is It by Stephen King. And like I like to do impressions, so I'll talk like Pennywise the Clown for my son, and he wants me to read him the book, which it's got a lot of, yeah, no, he can't be hearing that at his age, and it's like
Yeah.
1100 pages. But I thought, well, I want to write a story about, for one, a child not judging like creatures that are off-putting but not frightening. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, the monster that is speaking to the boy, it's just about talking about skepticism and critical thought, and how it's like guidance, because my father, died when I was 13. My son is 6. My dad was 47. I'm 41. So I've never really expected to live past 47. I've talked to other people who, and it seems to just be a thing with kids. It doesn't make sense, but it's just there.
Mm-hmm.
And I still interact with my son while I've been rebuilding my life, not to the level that I want, but I wanted to, so I wrote the book where it rhymes and it has like silly names in it, so it can be enjoyed on a child's level. And I have read it to him over the phone, but also there is kind of a deeper meaning that he can get as he's older, so he can appreciate it two ways. And so that's just a project that I've been developing, and I wrote the poem, I think, in like 30 minutes, so it wasn't like a long effort. And then I am working on another novel, which is an idea I'm kind of fleshing out still, but I have the basic gist.
Wow, very. Do you have an idea of when it will be published?
So I don't.
Okay.
I Yeah, the children's book, there's still some stuff I've got to kind of research, and it might be a little more involved, but
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that nothing exact. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Because as soon as it does come out, let me know.
Okay.
Let me
I
know
I definitely
because
will do.
yeah, yeah. I order literally everything that I want through my library. I bought it on the digital books and stuff like that. So I am totally here and supportive of any XJW works, whatever it is. I don't care what it is. It could be books, it could be music, it could be art, anything. I totally want to use my channel and everything to support XJW creators. So
Yeah,
whenever you have
definitely.
any projects or anything that you want to do, let me know because I totally want to have you on again.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so do you want to now read some of the comments with me?
Oh, yeah, we can.
Oh, and I also forgot to let everybody know in the beginning if you had any questions, you could ask questions in the chat because Micah is here, so we can ask him some questions. But I can go through some of the comments here and just show them. K Fred says hello.
Hi.
Clyde
Hi.
says hello. Jane,
Hi.
hello everyone. He is right, leaving family and friends. It is a separation like death of family member or even a divorce. Yeah, that's what you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
It makes sense now for me. It does make a lot of sense for me because I was kind of all up in like my emotions, like, oh, why did he die? Oh, why he did this? But then I kind of forgot how to like think a little bit more deeper into that.
Well, I've always liked art as well that I feel like works on two levels. So kind of like, initially you're like, wow, this is brutal, or and then maybe go back and like, oh, okay, I see some of this now. So
Mm-hmm. Jane also says the XJW book club is books by XJWs or other kinds of books. So I kind of started it with like a lot of XJW books since Micah reached out to me. So we're gonna do his books, and then I already have you on for this stream, so we kind of got this done early. But just like you mentioned, also Natalie Grand and her comic book, I also reached out to her. So
oh, nice.
one day she will come on the stream with me because I loved that comic book. It like
Yeah.
like you said, a lot of females don't really speak or do things like that. So when I saw that it was like another female XJW making a comic book from the perspective of a woman, I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God. I felt like I was in that comic book and I was just having so much fun flipping through the pages and the illustrations were beautiful and yeah, it was amazing. So yeah, definitely gonna keep doing XJW stuff first, and then we can move on to whatever suggestions everybody else has. You can let me know in the comments or in the community, in like the community posts and stuff like that. I'm looking through the comments right now, just seeing another comment. I want to write a few books one day. I got kind of an idea and two sci-fi book ideas. Okay, I wanted to highlight
Nice.
this one because you made a video on how to write a book. So
Mhm.
you could talk about it if you want for a minute.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I originally wanted to do it, I thought, well, no one's going to publish this because in my memoir, I talk about Jehovah's Witnesses, and I mean, it's factual, but it's not flattering. And I
Mm-hmm.
speak about Alcoholics Anonymous as well, and I'm not flattering of it either. I see a lot of similarities in the group. I don't have an issue with people, turning their life around or getting sober, but I have experienced and seen a lot of abuse in both groups, and I don't believe telling someone, this is neither here nor there, but yeah, I was like, this will be a problem to get this approved. And so I thought, well, I'll just do it myself to challenge myself. And I also, want to get it done. So I did make a quick 5 or 6 minute video about, you have to buy some formatting software, but you can do everything piecemeal. And there are things called vanity presses, which will take advantage of you. And I think I published all 3 books and I had them edited. I hired a lawyer for the first one. I did a lot of stuff for about 3,000, and most vanity presses start at about 5K up to 20,000. So definitely you can find that video on my YouTube channel. I only have a few up, or even you could reach out and I'd be glad to tell you what I know, because I think, consistent effort toward a goal will yield results. So the more stories, the better.
Yes. Can you let us know what your YouTube channel name is? Because that video was very helpful. I watched it.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. Let me look real quick. Sorry. That's
You don't know
that's
your
how it
YouTube name?
No. Well, I was really active on Twitter, and then when
Yeah.
Elon Musk took over, I've been banned twice. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going back. But yeah, I never use my YouTube. I think it's malcontent 1982. Let me double check. Yeah,
Okay,
malcontent.
so I'll copy and paste it and I'll put it in the description so people can go and subscribe to you and watch your videos about
Okay.
book writing. Because that's really helpful, Like, I was curious too. I'm like, I thought about stuff like that, but I'm so scared. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that. I don't want to
Well,
put my whole life out there.
and you could publish something if you had it written in
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes on Amazon. But
Wow.
like I researched, slander and libel. I researched, I just like if you publish without an ISBN number, you'll lose your rights. So, I thoroughly researched it, and yeah, I just want to empower
Mm-hmm.
other people, because even if you're writing a book that's science fiction, which that's awesome,
Mm-hmm.
um, but anytime you talk about it, that's an opportunity to say I came from this environment or whatever. And it's a very empowering thing. And I think that more people need to do things that enrich their lives and be kinder. I think like when you're doing things and pursuing what you love, there's a natural change, instead of, because we've lived these lives of obligation, just endless study and meeting and service, and it's like, wow, to speak to who I want to do what I want, to watch what I want, and to pursue what I want. That's what life should be about. And I think it can really be appreciated when you've just suffered for so long. Not that you need it, but I think like
Mm-hmm.
even like sometimes I smoke a cigar and I just like,
Mm-hmm.
even though they're terrible for me, I just feel
Mm-hmm.
so good, because I'm like, yeah, I know people who've been shunned for this, but you can't do anything to me now.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's crazy. I think Jane has three more questions here, and then I'll just wrap it up because we've been here for a while and I don't want to keep you for too long.
Okay.
But she says, question, did you outline your book first?
Um, so the way that I write is either I'll just start writing, but when actually doing a book, my memoir, I wanted to deal with significant moments in my life where indoctrination failed me. And I tried to make and basically I had a story to tell. And then I had written, I think, 120,000 words, and it got trimmed down to 34,000. But with Despicable, I had the last line of the book in mind, and I wrote toward it. That's usually how I write. And also the story I'm writing now, 1111, I know how I'm going to end the book. And so I kind of just, yeah, start and just work toward that. For me, that's very effective. But there's lots of different ways you can do it.
Okay. This one says, question, did you just use memory or a few mushrooms to get the imagination going?
So I've always had, I did not take mushrooms, but I've always had an affinity for words, which I was an only child. And I remember as a child, I learned a couple things really quick. If I wanted to tell people the truth, I had to make them laugh or they'd get angry at me. And also, I always wanted to like people to like point and be like, "Oh, isn't he clever?" or "That was cute." Like, I mean, I was somewhat of an attention whore. So, but I've always just thought of weird things. The first time I was
Mm-hmm.
disfellowshipped, I did stand-up comedy. I tried it a few times. So just like for me, just extremes, you grow up in all these extremes and you hear about all these insane things. So I always like stuff like Hoarders and My 600-Pound Life, and just I think it's interesting how differently we all can live. So, um, and also, I wanted to just tell a story that was crazy sounding, but if it got buried in the desert and found in 3,000 years, it could also, just like the Bible, be the source of a religion. That was kind of my thought. Like, let's just tell fantastical stories, because there are parts in it where it's clearly not true, but like it's just fantasy as well.
Yeah, now that you say that you're an only child, I am one too. So now I totally get you, because I used to do the same thing. I used to have journals and I used to write stuff and I used to make believe like I
Yeah.
created a fake world or something. And you
Yeah.
get into those things cuz you're by yourself. You don't have anybody to play with or do anything, and you
Yeah.
so strict that you can't watch TV, can't go on the internet or anything. So you
And
really have an imagination.
oh yeah.
Okay, last question. What do you think of the AI computer information out there? Because I do know a lot of people do say like AI is going to take over. They're going to be drawing your art for you, writing your books for you. And it kind of takes the human aspect out of everything. So that's why I wanted to let this be like the last question. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I think it's horrible. I don't want to live in a world where computers are making art while humans are making sandwiches. Like if you look at, I've had so many people tell me, "Oh, you could get AI to write more books." And no. I mean, I really put myself into my writing. Even I do edits where I go through every word and analyze synonyms, to convey and build the world or the emotion. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and I just think that's horrific. Like it just, who knows? I mean, it is also how start. So we should be keeping an eye on the robots, but yeah.
Yep, I totally agree with you. I don't like it. I think it's demonic, to be honest. I don't like when the AI is talking to me or answering my questions. I don't like that. I like
Yeah.
person to person interactions, human interactions, and that's why I love stuff like this, because this all came out of your brain. Came out of your
Mhm.
mind from all of your experiences. You made the characters, you made them feel, you made them alive, you've killed them. You know what I mean? Like you did everything and this came out of you? Okay, so I want to thank you so much for spending so much time with me, because we've been here for almost an hour and I am so sorry.
Oh, no, no worries. It was good. Yeah, no worries.
All right, I'm going to let you go now. Thank you everybody for joining us in the chat. I really appreciate it. And we are going to have more of these, hopefully, other books, more authors and stuff like that. But I definitely want to have you back for any other projects, or even your second book too. Like whatever
Oh, yeah.
whatever you want to do. You already got me on Facebook. I'm going to, send you my email as well just in case. And we should keep in contact.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to end it here. Bye everybody.